Hello! Welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie and today I have a special episode for you. I want to highlight my collection of half and half triangles wraps that I have knit over the past several years. I have quite a stack here that I'm going to hold up and hopefully be able to show you. Most of them are folded, but they kind of came undone. So here we go. I have a stack of 7 wraps to share with you today, and hopefully I will be able to talk about them in somewhat of an organized manner. They are all slightly different. Every single one uses a different set of color combinations, and so I think we have, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 different colors represented in these wraps, and I'm actually also wearing a sweater knit out of the same yarn, and so there are more colors to also showcase here. And you may notice the stripes on my sweater. They are from remaining yarns that I have knit these wraps out of. And actually I should back up. One of these wraps is not knit out of the same yarn as the rest, but I will get to that. I think what I'm going to do is go over the pattern first so you have a general idea of what this pattern is, and then we'll go into each one, not in super detail, but I will tell you the colors that I used and the modifications that I did. And I believe with each one I might have done something slightly different, and so I just want to point that out so you can see the colors up close and just get an idea of maybe some of the changes that I made to each one. The Half and Half Triangles Wrap is a free pattern on Purl Soho's website. I have my computer here in front of me, so if I'm looking down, it's because I'm checking notes there to make sure I give you the correct information. The pattern is written for their yarn that is linen quill, but you can use any fingering weight yarn to knit this pattern. It has a gauge of 24 stitches by 48 rows and 4 inches of garter stitch. I will say I did not measure gauge on any of these that I knit because it doesn't matter. It is a big shawl that's in garter stitch, and honestly with a long-term project my gauge probably changes from week to week, month to month, or whatever I am doing at the time, so it really doesn't affect the outcome for me, so I just don't even bother measuring. The needle size recommended in the pattern is a US 3 or a 3.25 millimeter needle. I have found using a long one on 40 inches has worked really well for me. I feel like 32 inches is just too crammed and 47 inches can be a little bit too much. So 40 inches seems to be a good length of cable for me for this pattern. The pattern does come in 2 sizes for the one that's like 2 colors. So it's a big square and it's divided in half, so there's 2 triangles, hence Half and Half Triangles Wrap. Purl Soho did release another pattern that is very similar with some color blocking and stripes, and that one the stitch count is even bigger than the one in the 2 color version, but it does use a variety of colors, so if that's something that you find interesting, then I would check that one out. But I did not knit that pattern, so I can't say anything about it specifically. The 2 sizes are large and basically larger, and their finished measurements are approximately 32 by 32 inches or 43 by 43 inches. I will say that with all of mine, I've blocked it out pretty generously or aggressively, and so I've generally been able to get actually bigger than that. The diagonal for the smaller one is 45 inches, diagonal for the bigger one is 61 inches. That diagonal is the one that you fold in half to wear it like a triangle shawl or wrap, and I have generally gotten bigger than that even if I cast on less stitches. But again, I like to block it out pretty aggressively just because I can. This is a free pattern, I don't know if I mentioned that, and the pattern is pretty short. It's like 1 page long, so go ahead and check it out and give it a read if that's something you're interested in. So basically what you do is you cast on for your full number of stitches from the beginning. I like to use an old Norwegian cast on because it is a stretchy cast on. I believe the pattern just says using a long tail cast on, so do whatever works for you. And then you go from there. You never end up increasing or decreasing stitches because it is all done in short rows. So the number of stitches on your needles should always remain the same, but the number of stitches you are working may change. Well, not may change. It will change every 2 rows because you'll work on the right side and work on the wrong side. The pattern is written for wrap and turns. I prefer German short rows, so that's just the way I do it. And I have a short video here on my YouTube channel that demonstrates how I do those modifications. So if that's something you're interested in, check it out. There are other people who have also shared tutorials using German short rows or wrap and turns, so if that's something you're interested in, you can also search for that here on YouTube. In the pattern, it recommends 2 skeins of each color if you're using it for the smaller size, 3 skeins of each color if you're knitting the larger size. Now I will tell you that when I knit my first one, I cast on for the larger size and I purchased 3 of each color. Well, when I got to the third one, I didn't use very much. A, because the skeins tend to come in more than 100 grams. I think the largest I've gotten is 107. I know you can't guarantee that each time, so you have to aim for a 100, but I didn't break into the third skein very much, like maybe 25 grams or so, and then I had a bunch left over, which I have since been able to use my yarn for various different projects, so it isn't a big deal for me, but I wanted to see if I could just purchase 2 of each color and use them up mostly to the end, and I was able to do that. But I will say a disclaimer that everybody's yardage may vary, your tension may be different than mine, so though it worked for me at a certain number of cast-on stitches, it may or may not work for you. And some people are okay with playing yarn chicken, and some people are not. So once you cast on your full number of stitches, you work back and forth up until your triangle gets smaller and smaller. And then, once you finish that first triangle, you'll resolve all of those wrap and turns or double stitches, and then you'll end up knitting in your second triangle. So that one will grow and start small and get bigger and bigger and bigger until you get to the end, and when you finally bind off, it will be at the longest point on an edge. It'll be on the opposite end of your cast on, if that makes more sense. So your cast on is here, your triangle is going to grow, and the rows that you have to knit get shorter and shorter, and then you will resolve those, and then as you start your next triangle, it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger until you cast off the same number of stitches that you started with. Now we will go into my different projects. So this is the first one I made. I'm going to pull up my project page here. This one I started in July of 2021 and finished in October of 2021. This one I cast on the largest number of stitches, which is 260 stitches, and I used the US 3 needles. And the colors I used are Rose Granite, which is this neutral warm gray with a slight pink to it. And then my second color is Rosewood Pink. I actually don't remember which one I started with, but those are the 2 colors that I used. And again, I used German short rows instead of wrap and turns for my short rows. And then just to play around, I think I slipped some stitches on the side, and in the original pattern it's a garter edging, but I wanted to try out this different edging, and I believe, let's see, on one side I slipped 3 stitches. Kind of looks like an I-cord, but it's not exactly an I-cord. Basically when you get to the end, you slip those stitches and then you turn your work and you just keep knitting. And then the other side, I believed I slipped 2 stitches just to see how that would compare. So it's pretty difficult to see a difference here on screen or even in person, but here they are on the screen. And I did not change the number of stitches I cast on. Even if I was going to slip those stitches, it really doesn't make a big difference. So that is this one, and I used 236 grams of the Rose Granite and 237 grams of the Rosewood Pink. So that is the first one. The second one, I decided I would try to see if I could knit the whole thing in just 2 of each color. So I cast on 230 stitches instead of 260 stitches, and I was able to do it. So this one, I used Dark Iris, which is this dark purple, and because the linen content in the yarn doesn't take up the dye the same as the rest of it, you get this heathered look with the little white bits of linen. And then my other color is Chestnut Red, which is a nice warm brown, red, brick red, brown color. And then on this one, I believe I slipped 2 stitches at the edge. Oh, and I forgot to mention on the other one, when I bind off, I prefer doing a traditional just knit-wise bind off, but I will use a double pointed needle that's at least 2 sizes bigger than the one that I used. to knit my project with. That way it stays nice and loose. I ended up using 193 grams of the dark iris and 196 grams of the chestnut red. So I was able to do it in 2 skeins, and I'm going to put it on to show you that it is still plenty big. So this is it folded in half and worn around my neck like so. It still fits underneath a jacket without having too much bulk, and it is very nice and warm. If I want to wear it over my shoulders, I can also do that, and it won't be sliding around. Of course, if I'm moving around a lot, it will fall off, like anything will, but otherwise it is very nice and warm, and it is a great size for me. So again, that is for 230 stitches, and I can do that with 2 of each color. The next one is called Golden Hour, and I knit this one using turmeric yellow, which is this nice warm medium yellow, and honey pink, which is a pinky golden beige color. And this one I actually did the same as the deep autumn one. I just wanted to test out my math to make sure that I could actually do it in 2 of each color. So I cast on 230 stitches again on US 3 needles, and I did the same thing as the previous one. Slipped 2 stitches on the edge and used German short rows, and I don't think there was anything other different. The diagonal ended up blocking up to 65 inches, and the edgings are like 44, 45-ish inches on each side. As it's worn, things kind of shift around, but that sizing is about the same, if not bigger, than actually the 260 stitches. So my 260 stitch one was bigger than even the large blocked numbers in the pattern. So here it is, and this one I did end up using less than 2, but just barely. I think for the turmeric yellow, I used 196 grams, and the honey pink, I used 198 grams. And yeah, I was able to finish, and it still fits very nicely. It is so comfortable and a good size that I can still fit underneath a jacket. Oh, I also have a video here on my channel that shows how I like to wear this in many different ways. So if you have made one and aren't sure how you want to wear it, or maybe you're still deciding if it's something that'll work for you or not, I would check that video out. I will also link it in the description box below this video. Next up is one that I called Garden Bouquet to remind me of all of our dahlias and our zinnias that are in our garden in the summer. And this one I knit using Pink Pop, which is this fluorescent neon pink, and Peachy Pink, which is this also pretty fluorescent neon melony orange color. And I used a US 3 needle for this one as well. I did cast on a few less stitches than the medium size I made. I used 220 stitches because I had already used some of this peachy pink in another project, so I had less to start with. And I still finished okay. I used about 180 grams of each one, and it was just fine. And so the sizing on this one, let's see, I don't know if I wrote out my block dimensions. I don't think I did, but it is still a good size. It is the smallest one, I believe, of all the ones I've made, but it still fits really well. I can still wrap it around my neck just fine, have it fit under a coat. It's not too tight around my neck. And if someone's worried about it falling off, you could always use like a cuff, shawl cuff on the side, or just tie like a little silk scarf to secure it, and it still fits over my shoulders really nicely. And yeah, I like this one a lot too. It has a nice pop of color, especially if it's really gray and dreary out. It's just like a nice little something. Next up, this one is called Purpose, Passion, and Possibilities. I started this one, oh, I think I forgot to mention the other timelines on the other ones. This one I started September 1st to commemorate the start of a school year. That would be in 2022. And this one I knit using Red Poppy, which is this orangey red, and Rhubarb Pink, which is this vibrant magenta color. I love red and pink together. I feel like they have great energy. This color combination just really feeds off of positive energy and momentum and excitement, and I just really love that about this one. I used about 190-ish grams of each color, and I cast on 230 stitches for this one. Again, I did German short rows. This one I slipped just one stitch on the edge instead of two. Let's see if I can find that edging to show you. On this one, I just slipped one stitch on the edge instead of 2 or 3, or leaving a garter edge. Number 6, I used a different yarn. So this one is Purl Soho's Quartz Base, and I used US 3 once again and cast on 230 stitches. I used about 210 grams of each color. This yarn is not as lightweight as the linen quill yarn is. So the Quartz Base is 420 yards for 100 grams instead of 439 yards. So I did expect to have to use a little bit more. I just wasn't sure how much. And so it just went a little bit over the 200 grams, which was actually fine because these skeins came in more than 100 grams as well. So it wasn't an issue. But the colors I used are Lavender Moon, which is this lavender, grayish lavender color. And then I used Gray Denim, which is like a gray blue. And this yarn has Surrey alpaca in it. Let me pull up the exact base content. It is 65% merino and 35% Surrey alpaca. It is super soft and drapey, and being just slightly heftier than the linen quill, it does give more of a squish factor, I would say, to the garter. I feel like linen quill can sometimes come across looking a little stringy, not necessarily in a bad way, it just isn't like a plump yarn, whereas this one is a little bit rounder than the linen quill, and so the fabric comes out different. And this one is also super drapey. I really like this one as well. It is definitely warmer than the linen quill is, and slightly heavier feeling, but I really like it, and I would love to knit another one using this base. I have a color combination picked out, but we'll see when I get to that. It might be a project for 2024. I don't know, we'll see. But I'm really liking this one. This is definitely more of a winter weight shawl, even though it's just slightly, like very slightly heavier in the yarn weight. The fiber content just makes it that much cozier and that much warmer. The last one I have to share with you is the one I just recently finished. It is number 7, and it technically isn't the entire pattern. It is more of a half triangles wrap instead of a half and half triangles wrap, which technically is just a half square, which technically is just a triangle wrap. And by just, I don't mean it to say just in a diminutive way. It's more so just because it isn't the whole pattern. So this one I had called Love Letters, and I did something a little different here. So aside from just knitting half the pattern, I also added in some color blocking stripes that I just adore. I cast on 260 stitches for this one, and I went up a needle size to a US 4, which is a 3.5mm needle. I wanted something airier than the other ones I have made, and it definitely gave me the result that I wanted. I started with this peachy pink color called Peony Pink. It's a very pale pink color. And then I wanted to have a little bit of fun with these added color stripes. I have Bright Flamingo here, which is a very neon coral pink, Raw Sienna, which is like a yellow ochre raw sienna color, and then Dark Denim, which is a very deep heathered navy. And I just really like these colors together. I think it gives it a modern vibe. And what I did was when I cast on, which is this bottom part of the triangle, I cast on to 260 stitches. After I turned 60 stitches, I joined the Bright Flamingo and I knit 20, or I turned 20 stitches. And I did the same for the Raw Sienna, and I did the same for the Dark Denim. And then I just finished it off in the Peony Pink again, and then I bound off knitwise. And here we go. I really like how this one turned out. Again, I called it Love Letters, and I like how I have these stitches here from the bind off. They remind me of lined paper when you're writing letters, and it also reminds me of when you're writing a sentence and you have the dot dot dot. So I love how that looks. This is actually on the right side. And then if you look at the technical wrong side, because of it being garter, you also get to see these dot 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 lines in the color changes. And I just think that is so appropriate for this project that I've called Love Letters. And I will say that even though I did not knit the entire square, I love it as it is. I wanted something light and airy. In the beginning, I wasn't planning on knitting it just to the halfway point, but once I got there, it just felt right, and I was ready to be done with it, and it just ended up being really nice to listen to my gut and finish it when I was still going to be enjoying the process, and then this way I get to enjoy the final result when I'm ready to enjoy the final result. So I ended up using 187 grams of the Peony Pink, and I used 29 grams of Bright Flamingo, 26 grams of Raw Sienna, and 24 grams of the Dark Denim. I measured it blocked, and along the diagonal it's 74 inches. The deepest point of the triangle is 37.5 inches, and then the edgings are 53 inches and about 56 inches. So it's plenty big to drape over my shoulders. I can also wear it folded in half around my neck like a cowl, and I can also just not fold it in half and wear it like a cowl. It is so light and easy to put on, and the colors make it easy for me to match with basically anything that I'm wearing. I can throw it over a jean jacket, under my down jacket. I think because it has warm and cool colors in it, it really can go with pretty much anything. So I'm very happy with the end result. So that is it from me today on my collection of half and half triangles of wraps. I really hope that it provided you some inspiration on whether or not you decide to make one, or maybe you have been thinking about different color combinations, or maybe you just were curious as to what the big deal is about this project, and maybe you decided it wasn't for you. And either way, I feel like that is some valuable information gained. And with that, I hope you are doing well and taking care of yourselves, and I will talk to you next time.